happens? Well, tonight, just an hour and a half before his self-imposed deadline, Trump backed down and managed to justify a form of an off-ramp for himself. In a post on his social media account, Trump said he had agreed to, quote, suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of, you guessed it, 2 weeks. And in case you weren't familiar, 2 weeks has long been the president's absolute favorite timeline for putting off promises that he doesn't want to deliver on.
Kill everybody tomorrow at 5 p.m. We all freak out. Then he's like, you know what, actually, I'll kill everyone in 2 weeks. Then we relax, and then he forgets he ever said it in the first place. He has the memory and the skin color of a goldfish. And maybe the worst part, well, you know he's a bananas, but maybe the worst part of all of this is how relaxed the congressional Republicans are about it. Now, he threatens to annihilate a civilization. They're like, well, you know how he is. He's a big talker. He yaps. And it's always 2 weeks. He's like a conscientious employee. He always gives 2 weeks notice.
We're going to be sending letters out in about a week and a half, 2 weeks. I can't tell you that, but I'll let you know in about 2 weeks, within 2 weeks. I could answer that question better in 2 weeks. I'll do this at some point over the next 2 weeks. I'll announce it over the next 2 weeks. I'll tell you about that in a month from now or 2 weeks from now.
Trust President Putin.
You know, in about 2 weeks. You can ask that question in 2 weeks, and we'll see. It'll be out in about less than 2 weeks. We're going to start selling, hopefully, in about 2 weeks.
I'll be making a big decision on the Paris Accord over the next 2 weeks.
We're signing a health care plan within 2 weeks. We call it the gold card, and we're going to start selling, hopefully, in about 2 weeks. So we can just sit down, and I'll do this at some point over the next 2 weeks. They would have had a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks.
We'll have something in 2 weeks.
You'll have your approval in 2 weeks. I could answer that question better in 2 weeks.
I'll let you know in about 2 weeks.
You can ask that question in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I think in 2 weeks we'll know which way I'm going.
It's always 2 weeks. Always 2 weeks. Now, the 2 weeks sees complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz. Though it does not seem that Iran is giving up control of the strait itself. A strait it did not control before Trump started this war. In fact, Iran's foreign minister made a point of saying that safe passage through the Strait of Hormuz will be possible via coordination with Iran's armed forces, which definitely does not sound like going back to the way things were just over a month ago. Now, in a separate statement quoted in Iranian media from Iran's Supreme National Security Council, they're also claiming that they forced, quote, America to accept its 10-point plan, in which, again, according to this statement from Iran's Supreme National Security Council appearing in Fars media, the United States committed in principle to, quote, continued Iranian control over the Strait of Hormuz, acceptance of enrichment, lifting of all primary and secondary sanctions, and payment of compensation. It's very hard to believe that the Trump administration would agree to any of that, even the Trump administration. But in any case, Trump seems to have put off for this moment, right while we are sitting here, the catastrophic strikes he's been promising. And it feels kind of like we've been here before, doesn't it? It's because we have. I mean, last month, Trump gave Iran 48 hours to open the Strait of Hormuz, threatening to obliterate the country's power plants if they didn't comply by March 23rd. But when that day arrived, Trump extended his deadline by 5 days, saying the U.S. would hold off until March 28th. Then he extended that deadline by 10 days, setting it for April 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern. Then this past Sunday, he inexplicably shifted it back by another 24 hours to April 7th, which was this evening. And now, of course, he's postponed that deadline by 2 weeks, which would push it back to April 21st. And look, if this tentative ceasefire, where I would note even the Iranians don't seem to be on the same page, and they certainly don't seem to be on the same page as the Trump administration in terms of the demands and what everybody's saying has or has not been agreed to. If it were actually a ceasefire with a verifiable step forward to ending this disastrous war of choice that Trump himself started, well, that would be should be a relief to everyone. But right now, after all that bluster, after all that maximalist language and reprehensible threats of genocide, after all that, where does this leave us? I mean, Gas prices are at their highest levels in years, with the national average now sitting at $4.14 a gallon, according to AAA. Trump has destroyed America's already fractured relationship with our closest allies, threatening the future of the NATO alliance. America has lost any moral authority on the question of war crimes and whether we can expect other countries to adhere to the Geneva Conventions as Trump ignores them. He's risked the prestige of America's military, treating them like a bunch of toy soldiers. And today, the regime that was facing mass protests just a few months ago mobilized hundreds of Iranians to take to the streets and form a human chain around the power plants and bridges that the U.S. had threatened to target. When the president was asked by NBC News about that, he said without a hint of irony that the demonstrations were, quote, totally illegal, adding they're not allowed to do that. So if you're keeping track, the president insists it's fair game to wipe out an entire country in violation of international law. But if Iranians gather on their bridges and around their power plants, he says that's illegal. Meanwhile, Trump's insane threats have become something of a last straw for many in the president's fraying MAGA coalition. Right-wing influencers like Alex Jones, Candace Owens, Marjorie Taylor Greene are now calling on Trump's cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment and remove Trump from office. And just listen to this familiar-sounding edict from MAGA influencer Tucker Carlson.
If you work in the White House or in the U.S. military, now it's time to say no, absolutely not, and say it directly to the president, no. Those people who are in direct contact with the president need to say no. I'll resign. I'll do whatever I can do legally to stop this because this is insane. And if given the order, I'm not carrying it out. Figure out the codes on the football yourself.
Sound familiar? Tucker Carlson is imploring members of the military not to carry out any illegal orders issued by Donald Trump. That's essentially the same advice that several Democratic lawmakers gave to members of the armed services last year. It's the advice that prompted Trump to accuse those Democrats of treason, target them for retribution. Trump's defense secretary even tried to demote Senator and retired Navy Captain Mark Kelly over his role in that message to service members. Now, after the president just walked the nation to the brink of carrying out a major war crime on his behalf, I actually can't think of anyone better to talk to. Joining me now is Democratic Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona. He's, of course, a member of the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services.
Well, I mean, we're still in the same spot I think we were in a couple of weeks ago or even weeks before that. We have a president that has no, strategic plan, no goal he was trying to achieve, or at least moving the goalposts over and over again. He's not a serious president. He doesn't think before he speaks. What he said this morning was incredibly disturbing, that he was going to end a civilization that, by the way, has been around for thousands of years. And in doing that, he was basically saying that he was going to commit unlawful acts, which I've been concerned about since November. So I am, certainly somewhat relieved for now that there are not going to be massive strikes on civilian infrastructure in violation of the law, but we will have to see what happens next. I mean, he is not in my view, not a serious person. He doesn't listen to people around him. He doesn't get great advice when you consider who he put around him. And we're at a really, challenging point here. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed, and I don't see how any of this has helped the American people.
I want to get to that.
We can see there's something missing in your